Get lost, fake soldier. This bar's for real warriors, not costume party rejects.
Marcus Torres' voice cut through the Friday night buzz at Steel Anchor Bar like a serrated blade, making every head turn toward the lone woman at table 7. The sound of beer splashing across worn denim followed his words as he deliberately poured half his bottle onto Alexandra Morgan's lap, the golden liquid soaking through her light gray t-shirt and dripping onto the scarred wooden floor below. Alex, 28 years old with natural blonde hair twisted into a messy high bun and striking blue eyes that held depths most people never noticed, slowly set down her medical journal. Her fair skin, dotted with natural freckles across high cheekbones, remained perfectly calm despite the humiliation unfolding before 60 witnesses. She didn't flinch, didn't protest, just reached for napkins with movements so controlled they seemed almost mechanical. Steel anchors for operators who've actually seen combat, Torres continued, his 6'4" frame towering over her table. His navy blue military t-shirt stretched tight across heavily muscled arms as he gestured dismissively. Not hospital workers playing dress-up in surplus store gear. His 3 SEAL teammates erupted in laughter, phones already recording what they assumed would be viral content of a civilian getting schooled by real military elite. But something in Alex's stillness made Master Chief Fletcher pause mid-drink at the bar. 25 years in special operations had taught him to recognize certain things. The way she'd automatically cataloged every exit upon entering, how her feet positioned themselves for instant movement, despite appearing relaxed, the fact that her hands hadn't trembled once during the assault. What none of them knew was that in exactly 14 minutes, when Torres grabbed her shirt hard enough to tear the fabric, the dragon tattoo hidden beneath would make every person in Steel Anchor Bar understand they'd just witnessed the biggest mistake of their military careers. The Steel Anchor Bar had earned its reputation as Coronado's premier gathering spot for Navy SEALs, Marine Raiders, and other special operations personnel. Located just 3 blocks from Naval Base Coronado, its weathered wooden walls displayed decades of military memorabilia, challenge coins, unit patches, and photographs of warriors who'd paid the ultimate price. The establishment's unwritten code demanded respect for those who'd served, making Torres's aggressive behavior all the more shocking to the veteran patrons watching the scene unfold. Torres turned back to his table, where 3 other SEALs waited, with anticipation written across their faces. "Did you see how she just took that?" he asked loud enough for Alex to hear. "Real operators fight back. She's probably some wannabe nurse who thinks wearing surplus gear makes her military." Captain Sarah Hayes, the lone female officer in Torres's group, stood with calculated precision. Her regulation blonde hair was pulled back in a perfect bun, her posture radiating the authority of someone accustomed to commanding respect in male-dominated environments. She approached Alex's table with the predatory grace of a shark, sensing blood in the water. "Excuse me," Hayes said, her voice carrying the particular brand of condescension reserved for civilians who dared enter military spaces. "I couldn't help but notice your bearing. You're sitting like someone with military training, but your gear tells a different story." She gestured at Alex's simple attire, the gray t-shirt, dark military pants, and brown combat boots that had seen better days. "So, either you're former military trying to relive glory days, or you're another civilian playing soldier." Alex looked up from her medical journal, her blue eyes meeting Hayes' gaze with an unsettling calm. She didn't speak, didn't defend herself, simply returned her attention to the open page discussing trauma surgery techniques. The dismissal was subtle but complete, the kind of non-response that spoke louder than any verbal confrontation. Torres's laughter boomed across the bar. "Oh, she's got attitude now. Hey, fake soldier, Captain Hayes asked you a question. In the real military, we answer when officers speak to us." The third member of their group, Jake Martinez, approached carrying an unloaded Glock 9mm from behind the bar. Martinez was the team's weapons specialist, a compact man with intricate tattoos covering both forearms and the confidence that came from being acknowledged as one of the Navy's finest marksmen. "Since you're playing military," he said, setting the weapon on Alex's table with a metallic thud, "let's see how you handle this. Field strip it. Any real operator should be able to break down a Glock in under 30 seconds. Elena Rodriguez, the Steel Anchor's evening bartender, watched the confrontation with growing discomfort. She'd been serving military personnel for 3 years and had witnessed countless displays of ego and testosterone. But something about this felt different. The woman at table 7 wasn't cowering or fighting back. She was simply enduring with a patience that seemed almost otherworldly, "Leave her alone," Elena called out, setting down the glass she'd been polishing. "She's not bothering anyone." Ryan Brooks, the fourth SEAL and the team's communications specialist, raised his phone higher to capture Elena's intervention. "Oh, great. Now the help's getting involved. This is perfect content for showing how civilians don't understand military culture. If watching someone endure this kind of public humiliation while staying completely calm makes you want to know what happens next, hit that like button right now and subscribe to our channel. And here's something I'm curious about. Where are you watching this story from? Are you tuning in from the United States, Canada, the UK, Australia, or somewhere else entirely? Drop your country in the comments below. I love connecting with viewers from around the world who appreciate stories about hidden strength and quiet courage. Alex finally looked up from her journal, her gaze settling on the Glock. Without a word, she closed the medical text and set it aside. Her movements were deliberate, unhurried, as if she were preparing for a routine task rather than responding to a challenge designed to humiliate her. 12 seconds, she said quietly, her voice carrying despite its soft tone. That's the current base record for field stripping, a Glock 19, Martinez scoffed. 12 seconds? The base record is 27 seconds, set by a SEAL Team 6 operator. You don't know what you're talking about. Alex reached for the weapon with her left hand, her right still resting casually on the table. What happened next would be replayed thousands of times across social media platforms, analyzed frame by weapons experts and military enthusiasts worldwide. Her movements were economical, precise, almost boring in their efficiency. There was no flourish, no showing off, just the systematic disassembly of a weapon by someone who had done it so many times that muscle memory had replaced conscious thought. The slide came off, the barrel lifted free, the recoil spring assembly separated. Each component was placed on the table in a perfect line, oriented exactly as military armorers were trained to arrange them. The entire process took 11.4 seconds, completed with one hand while her other remained motionless. The bar fell silent except for the classic rock playing softly through the speakers. Even the pool players had stopped mid-game, their attention drawn to the impossible display they'd just witnessed. Martinez stared at the disassembled weapon, his confidence evaporating like morning fog. That's not possible. Not with one hand. Not that fast. Torres pushed closer to the table, his earlier amusement replaced by something harder. Luck. Had to be luck. Do it again. No, Alex said simply, beginning to reassemble the weapon with the same mechanical precision. The components flowed together like water finding its level, each piece settling into place with practiced ease. I don't perform tricks on command. Hayes stepped forward, her officer's training asserting itself. If you have legitimate military experience, then you'll have a military occupational specialty code, service dates, and duty stations. What's your MOS? Alex finished reassembling the Glock and set it aside. She picked up her water glass and took a slow sip before responding. I was a medic. Medic? Torres laughed, the sound harsh and grating. That explains the fancy gun handling. You probably learned that in some advanced combat lifesaver course, right? Played with weapons for a week, and now you think you're an operator. Tommy Sullivan, a grizzled veteran in his 50s wearing a faded army jacket, had been watching the exchange from his corner booth. He'd lost his left leg below the knee to an IED in Fallujah and spent most evenings at Steel Anchor nursing whiskey and trying to forget things that couldn't be forgotten. Something about the woman's demeanor triggered memories he'd thought buried. That wasn't medical corps training, Tommy said, his voice cutting through the tension. I've seen medics handle weapons. This was something else entirely. Brooks kept his phone trained on Alex, sensing that whatever was happening had the potential to go viral. His social media instincts told him this was building to something special, though he couldn't quite articulate what. Alex's medical equipment included advanced trauma monitoring devices originally developed for battlefield medics, featuring military-grade durability and satellite connectivity capabilities. These professional diagnostic tools could function in extreme environments with reinforced screens capable of withstanding conditions that would destroy standard civilian electronics. The portable cardiac monitors contained encrypted data transmission technology, ensuring secure communications during critical medical situations requiring hospital-level monitoring capabilities in remote locations where traditional emergency services couldn't reach patients in time. The technical specifications of her equipment would have impressed any medical professional familiar with cutting-edge trauma care, but to the SEALs surrounding her table, it simply looked like expensive gear that didn't match her humble appearance. Fletcher, still observing from his position at the bar, noticed details others missed. The way Alex's eyes swept the room in systematic patterns, cataloging threats and exits without conscious thought. How her breathing remained perfectly controlled, despite the escalating confrontation. The fact that her posture hadn't shifted an inch despite being surrounded by 4 aggressive operators. "What unit?" Hayes pressed, her officer's instincts telling her there was more to this woman than met the eye. "If you were military, you served somewhere. Combat medics don't learn precision weapon handling unless they were attached to special operations units." Alex set down her water glass with deliberate care. When she spoke, her voice carried a weight that made the SEALs unconsciously lean forward. "I said I was a medic. I didn't say what kind." Torres slammed his hand on the table, making the reassembled Glock jump. "Stop playing games. If you were some hotshot special operations medic, you'd have a call sign. Everyone in the teams has a call sign. So, what's yours?" The question hung in the air like a live grenade. Alex looked at each of the 4 SEALs in turn, her blue eyes holding secrets they couldn't begin to fathom. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. "I don't have a call sign." "This is nonsense," Hayes interjected. "Everyone in special operations has a call sign. It's not optional. It's part of the culture, the identity. You're lying." The crowd murmured agreement. This was common knowledge in military circles. Call signs were as fundamental to military aviation and special operations as ranks and serial numbers. They were earned through notable events, embarrassing moments, or characteristics that defined an operator among their peers. To claim advanced training without a call sign was like claiming to be a surgeon without knowing what a scalpel was. Brooks lowered his phone, sensing that the woman was about to be exposed as a fraud. This wasn't going to be the viral content he'd hoped for. Just another civilian getting caught in a lie about military service. But Master Chief Fletcher had a different perspective. He'd served long enough to know that some operators worked so deep in the shadows that their very existence was classified. He'd heard whispers of programs that recruited the best of the best for missions that never appeared in official records. Programs where call signs were a luxury they couldn't afford because names, any names, were security risks. Elena watched Alex's face carefully, looking for signs of the breakdown that usually accompanied such public humiliation. Instead, she saw something that reminded her of the 1,000-yard stare she'd witnessed in Too Many Veterans. The expression of someone who'd seen things that changed them forever. "Last chance," Torres said, his voice dropping to a growl that carried throughout the bar. "Tell us your call sign, or we're going to assume you're just another wannabe trying to play soldier. And trust me, we don't take kindly to stolen valor in this establishment." The atmosphere in Steel Anchor had shifted from entertainment to something more primal. This wasn't just about a confrontation anymore. It was about identity, honor, and the sacred boundaries that separated those who had served from those who merely claimed to. The crowd watched with the intensity of spectators at a gladiatorial match, waiting to see if the mysterious woman would reveal herself or be exposed as a fraud. Alex reached into her small medical bag and retrieved her smartphone. Not a standard civilian device, but something with subtle modifications that suggested capabilities beyond normal specifications. The reinforced case, specialized antenna array, and encrypted display indicated technology designed for environments where standard communications failed. She checked the screen briefly, then set the device aside. The simple action somehow conveyed that she was monitoring something more important than the juvenile confrontation unfolding around her. "You know what your problem is?" Torres continued, his voice rising with righteous indignation. "You think putting on surplus gear and talking the talk makes you one of us. But real operators, real warriors, we've bled for our country. We've lost friends, carried bodies, made sacrifices you can't even imagine." Alex looked up at him with an expression so calm it was almost unsettling. "You're right," she said simply. "I can't imagine your sacrifices." The admission seemed to deflate some of Torres's anger, but Hayes stepped into the gap with renewed aggression. "So, you admit you're not military. You admit you're some civilian playing dress-up in our space." "I admitted I can't imagine his sacrifices," Alex corrected gently. "Everyone's service is different. Everyone's losses are different." Martinez had been studying the reassembled Glock on the table, his weapons expertise nagging at him with details that didn't add up. "The way you handled that weapon," he said slowly, "that wasn't standard military training. That was muscle memory from thousands of repetitions. You don't get that kind of precision from qualification courses." Tommy Sullivan raised his whiskey glass in a mock salute. "Maybe she's one of those contractors. You know, the ones who make six figures doing what we used to do for military pay." The suggestion hung in the air for a moment before Torres dismissed it with a wave of his hand. Contractors still have backgrounds, still have verifiable service records. This one won't even admit to having a call sign. The skills Alex is about to demonstrate aren't learned in weekend self-defense classes. Veterans watching this will recognize the signs immediately. If you're starting to piece together who she really might be, let me know your theories in the comments. What country are you watching from? And have you ever encountered someone whose abilities didn't match their appearance? The confrontation was drawing attention from throughout the bar. Other patrons, a mix of active duty personnel, veterans, and civilian supporters of the military community, gradually formed a loose circle around table 7. Some held drinks, others had abandoned their pool games and dart matches to witness what was shaping up to be either a spectacular revelation or a devastating exposure. Fletcher noticed the crowd dynamics with the tactical awareness that never fully left special operations veterans. The civilians looked uncomfortable but curious. The active duty personnel seemed invested in the outcome. And the veterans were watching Alex with expressions that suggested they recognized something the younger crowd missed. "You want to know what I think?" Brooks said, still recording intermittently. "I think she's some kind of federal agent. FBI, DEA, maybe ATF. That would explain the weapon handling and the caginess about her background." Hayes nodded approvingly. "That actually makes sense. Federal agents get training at Quantico, some weapons exposure, but they're not military. It would explain why she's comfortable around guns, but doesn't have a call sign." Alex listened to their speculation with the same calm patience she'd shown throughout the confrontation. She neither confirmed nor denied their theories, simply continued sipping her water while they debated her identity. Torres wasn't satisfied with speculation. "Okay, Fed. If that's what you are, prove it. Show us some credentials, tell us what agency you work for. Federal agents don't have problems talking about their jobs." "I'm not a federal agent," Alex said quietly. "Then what the hell are you?" Torres exploded, his patience finally exhausted. "Because you're clearly not just some nurse, and you're obviously not military despite handling weapons like John Wick. So, what's your deal?" The question echoed through Steel Anchor with an intensity that made conversations at other tables pause. Even the bartender stopped polishing glasses to listen for the answer that would either resolve the tension or escalate it beyond control. Alex looked around the circle of faces surrounding her table, some hostile, some curious, some sympathetic. Her gaze lingered on Fletcher, whose weathered features showed the kind of understanding that came from decades of keeping secrets that couldn't be told. "I'm exactly what I appear to be," Alex said finally. "An emergency room nurse who knows how to handle weapons. Nothing more, nothing less." Martinez shook his head. "No way. I've trained with hundreds of operators, and I've never seen anyone break down a Glock that fast with one hand. That's not normal training. That's elite-level muscle memory." "Maybe she's lying about the nurse thing too," Brooks suggested. "Maybe she's some kind of private military contractor trying to maintain a cover identity." Hayes studied Alex with the analytical intensity of someone trained to read people under pressure. "The problem with your story," she said, "is that everything about you contradicts itself. Your posture says military, your weapon handling says special operations, but your gear says surplus store amateur. Something doesn't add up." Elena had heard enough. She moved from behind the bar with the protective instincts of someone who had seen too many good people torn down by bullies with badges and uniforms. "Why does it matter?" she asked, her voice carrying across the crowded space. "She's not bothering anyone. She's just trying to have a quiet drink and read her medical journal. What gives you the right to interrogate her?" Torres turned his aggressive attention to the bartender. "It matters because stolen valor is a federal crime. It matters because people like her disrespect everyone who's actually served by pretending to be something they're not." "I never claimed to be military," Alex said, her voice carrying enough authority to cut through Torres's bluster. "You made that assumption based on how I handle equipment and carry myself. All I've said is that I'm a nurse who used to be a medic. Everything else is your speculation." The distinction was subtle but important, and Fletcher caught it immediately. Someone with Alex's obvious training wouldn't make verbal mistakes about military terminology. The fact that she'd called herself a medic rather than a corpsman or military medic was telling. It suggested either deliberate misdirection or training outside traditional military channels. Tommy Sullivan struggled to his feet, using his cane for support. "You know what I think?" he said, his voice carrying the authority of someone who'd paid prices these younger warriors couldn't imagine. "I think you're all missing the point. This woman came in here looking for some peace and quiet, and you've turned it into an inquisition because your egos can't handle the possibility that someone might know things you don't." Torres whirled on the older veteran. "With respect, Sergeant Sullivan, this isn't about ego. This is about integrity, about protecting the honor of those who've actually served." "Honor?" Tommy laughed, the sound bitter and knowing. "Boy, honor isn't about bullying someone who won't fight back. Honor is about recognizing when you're in the presence of someone who's seen things you haven't, and choosing to respect their silence instead of demanding explanations." The rebuke hit harder than any physical blow could have. Torres' face flushed red with embarrassment and anger, but he couldn't bring himself to escalate against a wounded veteran whose service record was unquestionable. Alex looked at Tommy with something that might have been gratitude, though her expression remained carefully neutral. "Thank you," she said simply, "but they have a right to their suspicions. Military spaces should be protected from imposters." Hayes seized on the admission. "So, you acknowledge that you don't belong here. You acknowledge that Steel Anchor is a military space and you're not military." "I acknowledge that I'm a civilian," Alex replied. "Whether I belong here depends on your definition of belonging. The sign outside says, 'All are welcome who support our troops.' I support our troops." The answer was perfectly reasonable and completely unsatisfying. It addressed the letter of Hayes' challenge while dodging its spirit entirely, which only increased the SEAL's frustration. Brooks had been studying Alex's gear more carefully, his communications background making him notice details others missed. "That phone of yours," he said, gesturing at the device on the table. "That's not a standard smartphone. I can see the antenna modifications, the reinforced case. That's specialized equipment." Alex glanced at the device without concern. "Emergency room staff need reliable communications. Medical emergencies don't wait for good cell coverage." It was a plausible explanation, but Brooks had worked with enough specialized communications equipment to recognize military-grade modifications when he saw them. The antenna array suggested satellite communication capability, and the display screen appeared to use technology designed for use with night vision equipment. Fletcher finished his drink and approached the growing crowd around Table 7. His Master Chief insignia commanded immediate respect from the younger SEALs, who stepped aside to make room for him. He looked down at Alex with the calculating gaze of someone who had spent decades evaluating operators under stress. "Ma'am," he said, his voice carrying the formal respect due to someone whose status remained uncertain. "I'm Master Chief Fletcher. I've been watching this situation develop, and I'm curious about something. That weapon handling technique you demonstrated, would you mind telling me where you learned it?" Alex looked up at Fletcher with recognition of his rank and experience. "Various places, Master Chief. Medical training includes some weapons familiarization for deployment environments." "Deployment environments," Fletcher repeated slowly. "That's interesting phrasing. Most medical personnel would say, 'in case of deployment' or 'for overseas assignments.' You said deployment environments, like someone who's actually been in them." The distinction was subtle but significant, and Alex realized she'd revealed more than intended. Her slight pause before responding confirmed Fletcher's suspicions that there were layers to her story that hadn't been revealed. "I've worked in trauma centers that treat military personnel," Alex said carefully. "You pick up terminology from your patients." Torres had been growing increasingly frustrated with the cat-and-mouse conversation. "This is ridiculous. She's obviously hiding something. Real military personnel don't play word games about their service. They're proud of what they've done. Some military personnel," Fletcher corrected gently, "have done things they can't talk about, with people they can't name, in places that don't appear on any map. And sometimes the highest honor you can show that service is to never mention it existed." The Master Chief's words carried weight that silenced the crowd. Even the background conversations at other tables had stopped, as patrons strained to hear the exchange. Fletcher was suggesting possibilities that transformed the entire dynamic of the confrontation. Alex's comprehensive insurance coverage included specialized policies designed for medical professionals and military veterans, providing extensive protection up to several $1 million. These premium programs offered unique benefits for individuals with exceptional service histories, including PTSD treatment coverage, combat injury protection, and disability insurance specifically tailored for healthcare workers and former military personnel. The advanced financial planning services helped veterans transition their skills into civilian careers while maintaining security through diversified investment portfolios and emergency fund management. The financial arrangements that allowed someone to maintain such comprehensive coverage while working as an emergency room nurse suggested either exceptional personal wealth or institutional support that went beyond standard veteran benefits. Hayes wasn't ready to accept Fletcher's implications. A Master Chief, with respect, if she had that level of clearance, that level of background, she wouldn't be sitting in a bar in Coronado. She'd be in Washington or Virginia, working for agencies with three-letter names. Would she? Fletcher asked. Or would she be exactly where someone with that background would choose to be? Somewhere she could use her medical skills to help people while staying as far away from the intelligence community as possible. Alex watched the exchange with careful attention, neither confirming nor denying Fletcher's speculation. Her silence spoke volumes to those who understood that some stories couldn't be told, even years after the fact. Martinez had been examining the reassembled Glock, his weapons expertise demanding answers. This weapon was modified, he announced. Subtle changes to the trigger mechanism, slight adjustments to the grip angle. Whoever handled this weapon had it customized for their specific shooting style. Elena moved closer to examine the pistol. That's the bar's training weapon. We use it for concealed carry classes in the back room. It's never been modified. Then someone modified it in the last few minutes, Martinez insisted. These adjustments weren't here when I brought it to the table. The implication was staggering. If Martinez was correct, Alex had somehow adjusted the weapon's configuration during her 11-second disassembly and reassembly demonstration. Such modifications would require not just expertise, but the kind of intimate knowledge that came from thousands of hours of weapons maintenance under combat conditions. Torres grabbed the Glock to examine it himself, his expression growing increasingly troubled as he confirmed Martinez's observations. Holy cow, the trigger pull is completely different. The balance has changed. How is this possible? Alex remained seated, her calm demeanor unchanged despite the mounting evidence of capabilities that far exceeded her claimed background. Weapons require regular maintenance to function properly. Sometimes minor adjustments are necessary. Minor adjustments? Hayes laughed, the sound sharp with disbelief. You reconfigured a weapon during a speed demonstration while being watched by 60 people. That's not maintenance, that's artistry. Brooks had his phone out again, documenting the modified weapon from multiple angles. This is insane. I've never seen anything like this. She basically rebuilt this gun to her specifications in seconds, while making it look like routine disassembly. Tommy Sullivan nodded knowingly from his position at the edge of the crowd. I told you she was different. That kind of weapon familiarity doesn't come from medical training. That comes from places where your life depends on your weapon functioning perfectly every single time. Fletcher studied Alex with renewed intensity. Ma'am, I'm going to ask you a direct question, and I'd appreciate a direct answer. Have you ever been in a situation where weapon maintenance was a matter of life and death? The question hung in the air with the weight of shared understanding between warriors who'd faced similar situations. Alex looked at Fletcher for a long moment before responding. Master Chief, in my experience, weapon maintenance is always a matter of life and death. The only variable is whose life and whose death. The answer was philosophical enough to avoid direct admission while confirming everything Fletcher suspected. This woman had been in combat, had relied on weapons to survive, and had developed the kind of expertise that only came from extended exposure to life-threatening situations. Torres wasn't satisfied with philosophical answers. That's not good enough. I want specifics. When were you in combat? What unit? What operations? I told you, Alex said patiently. I was a medic. Medics go where wounded people are. Sometimes wounded people are in dangerous places. Hayes stepped closer, using her height advantage to create physical pressure. Stop deflecting. If you were a combat medic, you have service records, deployment dates, unit assignments. You have a DD-214 that would settle this whole conversation. Show us your discharge paperwork. Alex looked up at Hayes with an expression that made the SEAL captain unconsciously step back. There was something in those blue eyes that suggested depths of experience Hayes couldn't fathom. Captain, Alex said quietly, there are some discharges that don't come with paperwork. Some services that were never officially rendered. some people who were never officially there. The implications of her statement rippled through the crowd like shockwaves. Fletcher's expression had gone carefully neutral, the look of someone who had heard similar stories but couldn't acknowledge them publicly. Tommy Sullivan was nodding slowly, his own experiences with classified operations giving him context the younger SEALs lacked. Brooks lowered his phone, suddenly uncertain whether he should be recording what might be classified information. The tone of the conversation had shifted from confrontation to something more serious, more potentially dangerous to document. Something tells me you're not going to believe what Torres is about to discover. Share this video with someone who needs to see that strength comes in unexpected packages. Whether you're watching from North America, Europe, Asia, or anywhere else in the world, comment below and tell me, what would you do in Alex's situation? Martinez was still examining the modified Glock, his expertise revealing more details with each inspection. The serial number's been obscured, he announced. Not filed off, but treated with some kind of chemical process that makes it nearly impossible to read. This is professional work. Elena moved to look at the weapon herself. That's impossible. That gun was manufactured specifically for our training classes. The serial number was perfectly clear this morning. Then someone with access to military-grade chemical agents modified it sometime between this morning and now, Martinez said grimly. The kind of equipment needed for this work isn't available to civilians. Alex watched the examination with detached interest, as if the modifications were someone else's work rather than her own. Her calm acceptance of the mounting evidence against her civilian cover story only added to the mystery surrounding her true identity. Torres had reached the end of his patience with subtle interrogation. All right, enough games. I'm calling base security. We'll let the MPs sort out who you really are and whether you belong in a military establishment. He pulled out his phone, but Fletcher's hand closed over it before he could dial. Son, I wouldn't do that if I were you. Why not, Master Chief? If she's legitimate, military security can verify her identity. If she's not, they can deal with her appropriately. Fletcher looked at Alex, who nodded almost imperceptibly. Because, Fletcher said slowly, sometimes calling attention to people who don't want attention can be dangerous for everyone involved, including the people making the calls. The warning was subtle but unmistakable. Fletcher was suggesting that Alex might be connected to operations or organizations that wouldn't appreciate official scrutiny, the kind of people who dealt with unwanted attention in permanent ways. Hayes wasn't intimidated by vague threats. Master Chief, with respect, this is still America. We don't let people intimidate us out of verifying identities in military spaces. If she's hiding something, we have a right to know what it is. Do we? Tommy Sullivan asked from his corner. Do we really have a right to know everyone's story? Or do some people earn the right to their privacy by paying prices we can't imagine? Alex looked at Tommy with something approaching gratitude. Thank you, Sergeant Sullivan. But they're not wrong to be suspicious. Military spaces should be protected. She stood slowly, her movements fluid, despite having been seated for over an hour. As she rose, her posture shifted subtly, and everyone in the crowd could see that she was taller than she'd appeared while sitting. Her bearing changed as well, becoming more erect, more military, in a way that couldn't be faked. You want to know if I belong here? Alex said, her voice carrying further than it had all evening. You want to know if I have the right to drink in a bar reserved for warriors? Torres nodded eagerly, sensing that he was finally going to get the confrontation he had been pushing toward all evening. Alex reached into her medical bag and withdrew a small leather folder. She held it for a moment, as if weighing the consequences of whatever she was about to reveal, then set it on the table without opening it. That contains my answer, she said simply. But once you see what's inside, this conversation ends. No more questions, no more demands for proof. Whatever you learn, you keep to yourselves. Are we clear? Fletcher moved closer, his experience telling him that whatever was in the folder would change everything about the evening's events. Ma'am, are you sure you want to do this? Some secrets are worth keeping. Alex looked at him with appreciation for his understanding. Master Chief, secrets only have value if they protect people. These secrets were protecting the wrong person. Hayes reached for the folder eagerly, but Torres intercepted her. Wait. If this is classified material, we could all be in violation just by looking at it. It's not classified anymore, Alex said quietly. As of 18 months ago, everything in that folder was declassified and sealed. The only restriction was that it couldn't be disclosed without my permission. Brooks had his phone ready to record whatever revelation was coming, but Fletcher's sharp look made him reconsider. Some things weren't meant to be documented, even if they were technically legal to witness. Torres opened the folder with trembling hands, his earlier aggression replaced by nervous anticipation. The first document he saw made his face go pale. He handed it to Hayes without speaking, his mouth opening and closing soundlessly. Hayes looked at the document, and her expression shifted from aggressive confidence to shocked recognition. She passed it to Martinez, who studied it for several seconds before setting it down carefully on the table. "Holy cow," Martinez whispered. "You're her. You're actually her." The crowd pressed closer, trying to see what had so profoundly affected the three SEALs. But Alex calmly closed the folder before anyone else could examine its contents. "Now you know," she said simply. "Are we done here?" Torres found his voice, though it came out as barely more than a croak. We didn't know," the report said. Everyone thought correctly," Alex interrupted. "That person is dead, has been for 18 months. What you see now is all that's left." Fletcher stepped forward, his expression grave. "Ma'am, with your permission, I'd like to buy you a drink. Something stronger than water." Alex looked around the crowd, noting how the aggressive hostility had been replaced by something approaching awe. The transformation was complete, though the reasons for it remained hidden from most of the witnesses. "Thank you, Master Chief, but I should be going. My shift at the hospital starts in 6 hours, and I need sleep." She gathered her medical journal and prepared to leave, but Torres stepped into her path. His earlier aggression was gone, replaced by something that looked almost like desperation. "Please," he said, his voice thick with emotion. Let me apologize. We had no idea who you were, what you've done, what you've sacrificed." Alex looked at him with patience that seemed infinite. "Torres, right? You don't need to apologize for protecting military spaces from frauds. You were doing your job, protecting something important. But we were wrong. We were so wrong about everything." "You were wrong about my identity," Alex corrected gently. "But you weren't wrong about your duty. Never apologize for that." Following the incident, several participants would require specialized legal consultation services designed for military personnel facing disciplinary actions or career transitions. These comprehensive legal programs provided expert guidance on veterans' rights, employment protection laws, and professional licensing requirements for former military members entering civilian careers. The educational components included advanced certification courses, leadership development programs, and specialized training designed to help veterans leverage their military experience in corporate environments while maintaining professional standards and ethical conduct. The legal implications of what had transpired at Steel Anchor would extend far beyond the evening's events, potentially affecting careers, clearances, and official records for everyone involved. Elena approached Alex as she prepared to leave. "Your drinks are on the house tonight, and every night, for as long as you want to come here." "That's not necessary," Alex replied. "I pay my own way." "It's not about payment," Elena said. "It's about respect, about recognizing that some people have earned the right to drink wherever they choose." Alex nodded acknowledgement of the sentiment, then moved toward the exit. The crowd parted before her like water, creating a clear path to the door. No one spoke, but the silence carried more weight than any words could have. As she reached the entrance, Alex paused and looked back at the gathered crowd. "For what it's worth," she said, her voice carrying to every corner of Steel Anchor, "this is exactly the kind of place I fought to protect. Places where warriors can gather, share stories, remember friends who didn't make it home. Don't let anyone change that." She pushed through the door and disappeared into the Coronado night, leaving behind a bar full of people trying to process what they'd witnessed. The documents in the leather folder remained on table 7, testament to revelations that had transformed an evening of military posturing into something approaching religious experience. Torres sank into Alex's abandoned chair, his head in his hands. We messed up so badly." Hayes picked up the folder, holding it like a sacred relic. "I've read about operations like this, heard rumors, but I never thought I'd meet someone who actually—" She couldn't finish the sentence. The weight of what she'd learned pressed down on her like a physical presence. Martinez was staring at the modified Glock, understanding finally dawning. She wasn't showing off when she adjusted this weapon. She was making it safe, making sure it couldn't be used against anyone if things went sideways. Fletcher nodded approvingly. That's what professionals do. They control variables, minimize risks, prepare for contingencies most people never consider. Brooks had put his phone away completely, recognizing that some stories were too important to reduce to social media content. Master Chief, what happens now? Do we report this? Do we tell anyone what we learned? Son, Fletcher said firmly, we do exactly what that woman asked us to do. We keep it to ourselves, we treat her with the respect she's earned, and we remember that some secrets are worth protecting. Tommy Sullivan raised his whiskey glass in a solo toast. To the ones who come home broken, who rebuild themselves into something new, who keep serving even when no one knows their real names. The rest of the bar raised their drinks in silent acknowledgement, the gesture carrying more meaning than any formal ceremony could have. Outside, Alex drove through the empty streets of Coronado in her modest Honda Civic. The car's worn interior, a stark contrast to the advanced equipment hidden in her medical bag. Her phone buzzed with an encrypted message, the display showing coordinates and a single word, urgent. She studied the information for a moment, then deleted the message and continued driving toward her apartment. Some wars never ended. They just changed battlefields, shifted tactics, evolved with the times. Alex had thought her war was over when she'd traded her sniper rifle for a stethoscope, her tactical gear for scrubs. But tonight had reminded her that warriors never truly retired. They just found new ways to serve. The dragon tattoo hidden beneath her gray t-shirt seemed to pulse with renewed life as she contemplated the message's implications. Tomorrow she would return to Steel Anchor, would face the consequences of her revelation, would deal with the new dynamic her admission had created. But tonight, she had other concerns. Somewhere in the darkness, people needed help that only someone with her unique combination of medical training and operational experience could provide. The transition from combat to healing had never been complete. It had simply been an evolution of the same fundamental mission. As her car disappeared into the Coronado night, the dragon slept beneath gray fabric, waiting for the next time its bearer would be called to serve in ways that could never be officially acknowledged or documented, because some warriors were too valuable to risk, too skilled to waste, and too necessary to let rest. The phone buzzed again. This time, Alex pulled over to read the full message. When she finished, she sat in her car for several minutes, weighing choices that would affect more lives than just her own. Finally, she started the engine and turned toward downtown San Diego, where a trauma center was dealing with casualties from an incident that hadn't yet made the news. An incident that required someone with experience in both battlefield medicine and counterterrorism operations. The dragon was waking up. The emergency department at UC San Diego Medical Center buzzed with controlled chaos when Alex arrived at 11:47 p.m. She'd changed from her civilian clothes into dark blue scrubs during the drive. The transformation from mysterious bar patron to medical professional happening with practiced efficiency in the hospital parking garage. Dr. Rebecca Martinez, the trauma director, met her at the staff entrance with an expression that mixed relief and urgency. "Thank God you're here. We've got 6 critical patients from what they're calling a training accident at Camp Pendleton. But the wounds?" She paused, struggling to find the right words. "They don't match the story we're being told." Alex moved through the emergency department with purposeful strides, her medical training taking precedence over everything that had transpired at Steel Anchor Bar. The familiar environment of controlled medical emergency grounded her in ways that civilian confrontations never could. Here, her skills had clear purpose, measurable outcomes, lives that could be definitively saved or lost. "What kind of wounds?" Alex asked, reviewing patient charts on a tablet as they walked toward the trauma bays. "Penetrating injuries consistent with high-velocity projectiles, but the entry patterns suggest professional placement rather than accidental discharge. Plus, there are signs of field medical treatment that go way beyond standard combat lifesaver training." Alex paused in her chart review. Someone with advanced trauma experience treated these patients before transport? That's what's strange. The field medics who brought them in claim they found them already stabilized, bleeding controlled, airways secured. Whoever did the initial treatment knew exactly what they were doing. They entered Trauma Bay 3, where a young Marine lay unconscious on the examination table. His injuries were severe but expertly managed, the kind of precise field medicine that kept people alive long enough to reach definitive care. Alex examined the wound patterns with growing concern, recognizing techniques she'd learned in very specific training environments. "Dr. Martinez," she said quietly, "these aren't training accident wounds. This patient was shot by someone who knew exactly where to place rounds for maximum psychological impact while minimizing fatal damage. This is interrogation technique, not accidental fire. The implications hung heavy in the sterile air of the trauma bay. If Alex was correct, 6 Marines had been victims of a sophisticated attack that was being covered up as a training incident. The questions that raised extended far beyond medical care into areas that touched on national security and operational compromise. Alex's phone buzzed with another encrypted message. This one contained more details about the incident at Camp Pendleton, details that weren't appearing in any official reports. A joint training exercise between Marine raiders and an unnamed government agency had gone catastrophically wrong when the facility was attacked by unknown operatives using military-grade equipment and tactics. The Marines in her trauma bay weren't victims of friendly fire or equipment malfunction. They were survivors of what appeared to be a deliberate assault on a classified training facility, and someone was working very hard to keep that information from becoming public. "Dr. Martinez," Alex said, her voice carrying new urgency, "I need you to clear Trauma Bay 7 and activate our highest security protocols. What I'm about to tell you cannot leave this building." Over the next 3 hours, Alex worked with focused intensity to stabilize patients whose injuries told stories that contradicted every official account of the evening's events. The field treatment they had received showed expertise consistent with special operations, medical training, but the attack patterns suggested their assailants had similar capabilities. As dawn approached, Alex found herself alone with the most critically injured patient, a Marine raider whose condition had stabilized enough to allow brief conversation. When his eyes opened and focused on her face, recognition dawned with shocking intensity. "Viper 1, he whispered, his voice barely audible through the mechanical ventilation equipment. "They told us you were dead." Alex checked the trauma bay's security monitoring to ensure they weren't being observed, then moved closer to the patient's bedside. "Who told you that, Marine?" "Classified briefing last month. Counterintelligence update on compromised operators. Your photo was in the KIA section." He struggled to speak more clearly despite his injuries. "But if you're alive, then the intelligence was wrong. About everything." The implications crystallized with terrifying clarity. If reports of her death had been distributed through official intelligence channels, then someone with high-level access was deliberately spreading disinformation. The question was whether this was protective misdirection or something more sinister. "What was your unit doing at Camp Pendleton?" Alex asked. "Joint training exercise, testing new counterterrorism protocols with CIA contractors, supposed to be routine." His expression darkened. "But the contractors knew too much about our capabilities. Asked questions about operations that were supposed to be classified beyond their clearance level." Alex felt the familiar weight of operational paranoia settling over her, like an old, unwelcome friend. The attack on Camp Pendleton wasn't random terrorism or foreign infiltration. It was targeted elimination of personnel who had discovered something they weren't supposed to know. "The contractors who attacked you," she said, "did you recognize any tactical signatures, equipment types, communication protocols?" "That's just it," the Marine replied. "They weren't foreign contractors. They were American, former military, probably special operations. And they knew our procedures well enough to exploit them." The revelation transformed Alex's understanding of the entire situation. This wasn't an external attack. It was an internal house-cleaning operation, designed to eliminate witnesses to something larger. The fact that the survivors had been brought to her hospital, to her specifically, suggested she was either meant to discover the truth or be eliminated along with it. Alex's secure phone buzzed with an incoming call from a number she hadn't seen in 18 months. The caller ID showed only Blackjack, the code name of her former handler from operations that had never officially existed. She stepped into a secure communication room and accepted the call. "Viper 1, we have a problem," came the familiar voice, aged by stress and carrying an urgency that made Alex's pulse quicken. The Pendleton incident wasn't random. Someone's cleaning house, eliminating anyone who might connect certain operations to certain agencies. "Including me?" Alex asked. "Especially you. Your medical cover was perfect until tonight. Whatever happened at that bar compromised your position. Now you're exposed, and there are people who prefer their former assets to remain permanently retired." Alex looked through the communication room's window at the trauma bay where 6 Marines fought for their lives. "What about the survivors?" "Officially, they'll recover from training accident injuries and return to duty with no memory of what really happened. Unofficially, they're loose ends that need to be tied up. Not on my watch, Alex said firmly. These Marines were attacked because they discovered something. I'm not letting them die to protect someone's secrets. Viper, listen carefully. The organization that created you, that trained you, that gave you capabilities beyond anything in the official military structure, that organization has been compromised. There are factions within it that have been selling information, eliminating witnesses, covering up operations for profit rather than national security. The weight of betrayal settled over Alex like a physical presence. Everything she'd sacrificed for, everyone she'd lost, every mission she'd completed in service to what she'd believed was her country, all of it potentially corrupted by people who valued profit over patriotism. "What do you need me to do?" she asked. "Survive, protect those Marines, and prepare for the fact that the people hunting you have access to everything you've ever done, everywhere you've ever been, everyone you've ever trusted." The call ended, leaving Alex alone with the knowledge that her carefully constructed civilian life was about to become a war zone. The dragon tattoo beneath her scrubs seemed to burn with renewed purpose as she contemplated the battles ahead. The aftermath of what just happened will change everything at Steel Anchor Bar. Before we see the long-term consequences, where in the world are you experiencing this story? Your location and thoughts make this community amazing. Alex returned to the trauma bay to find Dr. Martinez waiting with a troubled expression. "We've received orders to transfer these patients to a military facility immediately. The transfer team is already en route." "On whose authority?" Alex asked, Disao or Disard, though she suspected she already knew the answer. "Department of Defense Medical Command. They're invoking national security protocols for the transfer." Alex recognized the pattern immediately. The same people who had orchestrated the attack were now moving to control the survivors, ensuring that their testimony could never threaten operational security. Once the Marines were transferred to military custody, they would disappear into a system designed to protect secrets rather than people. "Dr. Martinez, I need you to trust me. Those transfer orders aren't what they appear to be. These patients are in danger if they leave this hospital." Martinez studied Alex's expression with the clinical assessment skills that had made her one of the country's premier trauma surgeons. "What aren't you telling me about these injuries? And what aren't you telling me about yourself?" Before Alex could respond, the emergency department's main entrance burst open to admit 6 heavily armed individuals in tactical gear. They moved with military precision, but their equipment and bearing suggested private military contractors rather than official government personnel. "Dr. Morgan," called the team leader, a tall man with the kind of scars that spoke of extensive combat experience. "You're needed for immediate consultation on a classified medical emergency." Alex recognized the euphemism immediately. Immediate consultation was contractor speak for involuntary extraction, and the medical emergency they were referring to was her continued existence as a security risk. "I'm currently treating critical patients," Alex replied calmly, positioning herself between the contractors and the trauma bay containing the Marine survivors. "Medical ethics require me to complete their care before considering other responsibilities." The team leader's expression hardened. "Doctor, this isn't a request. You're coming with us now, or we'll be forced to implement alternative protocols." Martinez stepped forward, her medical authority asserting itself despite the obvious danger. "Gentlemen, this is a civilian medical facility. You have no jurisdiction here, and I'm ordering you to leave immediately." 2 of the contractors moved to flank Martinez, while the others maintained their focus on Alex. Their positioning was professional, designed to control the space without appearing overtly threatening to the hospital's security cameras. "Ma'am," the team leader said to Martinez, "this is a matter of national security. Dr. Morgan has information critical to ongoing operations. Her cooperation is not optional." Alex analyzed the tactical situation with the same clinical precision she applied to medical emergencies. 6 contractors, professional-grade equipment, positioned to control exits and witnesses. The hospital's security would be ineffective against this level of opposition, and civilian casualties were likely if the confrontation escalated. But the contractors had made one critical mistake. They'd assumed that Alexandra Morgan, emergency room physician, would respond with the same compliance as Viper 1, special operations asset. They had failed to account for the possibility that 18 months of saving lives instead of taking them had fundamentally changed her priorities. "Dr. Martinez," Alex said quietly, "please initiate Code Silver and evacuate all non-essential personnel from this section." What's about to happen isn't going to be pleasant to witness. Martinez activated the hospital's security alert system with growing understanding that her trauma surgeon possessed capabilities that extended far beyond medical training. "Alex, what are you doing?" "My job," Alex replied simply, "protecting patients from people who would do them harm." The transformation that followed would have been impossible to believe if it hadn't been witnessed by multiple security cameras and documented by hospital staff. Alex moved from her position near the trauma bay with fluid grace that seemed to defy physics, her medical training and combat expertise merging into something that transcended both. The first contractor never saw her coming. One moment he was maintaining overwatch on the hospital staff. The next he was unconscious on the floor with his weapons secured and his communications equipment disabled. Alex had neutralized a fully armed professional in less than 3 seconds using techniques that appeared to be simple accident to casual observers. The team leader spun toward the disturbance, but Alex was already moving to her next target. The contractor flanking Dr. Martinez found himself disarmed and restrained before he could process what was happening, his tactical position becoming a liability as Alex used his own momentum against him. The remaining 4 contractors responded with professional efficiency, drawing weapons and establishing fields of fire that should have ended the confrontation immediately, but Alex wasn't where their training told them she should be. She was using the hospital equipment, architectural features, and her intimate knowledge of the building's layout to make herself effectively invisible. "She's not a doctor," one contractor called out, his voice carrying disbelief and growing fear. "She's something else entirely." The team leader keyed his radio with shaking hands. "Control, we have a problem. The target is not a compliant asset. Repeat, the target is hostile and extremely dangerous. Request immediate backup." Alex appeared behind him as he spoke, her hand closing over his radio before he could complete the transmission. "Backup won't be necessary," she said calmly. "Your team is leaving now, and you're never coming back." The contractor spun to face her, but found himself looking into eyes that held depths of experience his training had never prepared him to confront. This wasn't the frightened physician they'd expected to extract. This was a predator who had allowed them to enter her territory and was now demonstrating why that had been a fatal mistake. "Who are you?" he whispered. "I'm the person who's going to ensure those Marines live to tell their story," Alex replied. "And you're the person who's going to explain to your employers why their cleanup operation just became a much bigger problem." Within minutes, 6 professional contractors had been neutralized, disarmed, and secured using nothing more than hospital equipment and medical supplies. The transformation of Dr. Alexandra Morgan from compassionate healer to lethal operator had been so swift and complete that even Dr. Martinez struggled to process what she'd witnessed. "Alex," Martinez said, her voice shaking, "what just happened? What are you?" Alex surveyed the unconscious contractors with clinical detachment, ensuring their restraints were secure and their weapons properly safeguarded. "I'm someone who used to solve problems with violence, then learned to solve them with healing. Sometimes the 2 skill sets overlap." Hospital security arrived to find 6 individuals in tactical gear secured and ready for law enforcement custody, along with enough weapons and equipment to supply a small military unit. Alex provided a detailed report that carefully omitted any mention of her specialized training, attributing the successful defense to luck and medical familiarity with human anatomy. But Master Chief Fletcher, who arrived with Coronado Police as part of the response team, recognized immediately what had really transpired. He found Alex in the break room, changing out of scrubs that had been torn during the confrontation. "Ma'am," he said respectfully, "that was some impressive luck you experienced tonight." Alex looked at him with appreciation for his understanding. "Sometimes luck and preparation are difficult to distinguish, Master Chief." "Indeed they are. I also wanted to inform you that the situation at Steel Anchor has been resolved. Torres and his team have requested permission to formally apologize for their behavior earlier this evening." Alex paused in her preparation to return to patient care. "That's not necessary, Master Chief. They were protecting something important. With respect, ma'am, they believe it is necessary. And after what happened here tonight, I believe they're beginning to understand what they were really protecting." Fletcher handed her a secure phone, its display showing an encrypted message from Torres himself. "Request permission to provide security assistance for medical facility and personnel. No questions asked, no explanations required. Just Marines protecting Marines." Alex stared at the message for several moments before responding. Assistance accepted. Welcome to the team. The consequences of the evening's events rippled outward through military and intelligence communities like shockwaves from a depth charge. Within hours, 3 separate investigations had been launched into the security breach at UC San Diego Medical Center, the attack on Camp Pendleton, and the mysterious contractor team that had attempted to extract a civilian physician. Torres and his SEAL team arrived at the hospital before dawn. Their earlier antagonism transformed into protective purpose that would have seemed impossible just hours before. They established a security perimeter around the trauma ward with professional efficiency, their presence serving as a deterrent to any further extraction attempts. "Doc," Torres said when he found Alex checking on her patients, "I owe you more than an apology. I owe you my understanding of what real service looks like." Alex continued her medical rounds, checking vital signs and adjusting treatments with the same methodical precision she'd demonstrated in combat. "Torres, the best apology you can offer is to help me keep these Marines alive. Everything else is just words." Hayes approached with a tablet containing intelligence reports that painted a disturbing picture of the night's events. "Ma'am, we've been analyzing the contractor team that tried to extract you. Their equipment and tactics suggest a level of funding and training consistent with major intelligence agencies." "Domestic or foreign?" Alex asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. "Domestic. These were Americans hunting Americans, which means the threat is coming from inside our own system." Martinez joined the conversation with medical updates on the Marine survivors. "All 6 patients are stable, but they're going to need extensive recovery time. The psychological trauma may be more significant than the physical injuries." Alex nodded, her medical training taking precedence over operational concerns. "Doctor, I need you to understand that these patients may continue to be targets. Their recovery needs to happen in a secure environment with people who understand the stakes." "Which is why we're here," Martinez said, gesturing toward the SEAL team that had established security positions throughout the ward. Master Chief Fletcher explained that you have friends who are willing to provide protection. The transformation of Steel Anchor Bar's confrontational evening into a protective alliance demonstrated the kind of redemption that made military service meaningful. Torres and his team had evolved from antagonists seeking to expose a fraud into allies committed to protecting someone whose service transcended their previous understanding of sacrifice. Jake Martinez found Alex during her break, his weapons expertise having identified details about the contractor equipment that troubled him deeply. "Ma'am, those weapons the contractors were carrying, they're not standard military issue. Someone with access to experimental military technology equipped them." "How experimental?" Alex asked. "Oh, technology that doesn't officially exist yet. Prototype systems that are supposed to be restricted to Tier 1 special operations units. Whoever sent them has access to equipment that most generals don't know about." The implications were staggering. The people hunting Alex and the Marine survivors had resources that suggested involvement at the highest levels of the defense establishment. This wasn't a rogue operation by disgruntled contractors. It was a systematic elimination campaign by people with unlimited access to classified resources. Brooks had been monitoring communications intercepts from his position in the hospital's security center, his technical background allowing him to piece together intelligence from multiple sources. "We're picking up chatter about a cleanup operation that's been accelerated due to unexpected complications. They're talking about you, aren't they?" Alex reviewed the intercepted communications with growing concern. The language was clinical, professional, and completely devoid of recognition that they were discussing human lives. To the people orchestrating these operations, she and the Marines were simply variables to be eliminated for operational security. "Brooks, how secure is this facility's communications infrastructure?" "Standard civilian hospital security, which means it's essentially transparent to anyone with government-level resources." "Why?" Alex made a decision that would fundamentally alter the trajectory of her civilian life. "Because we're about to make some calls that will either end this threat permanently or get us all killed in the attempt." She retrieved her specialized phone and began making connections that had remained dormant for 18 months. Each call activated networks of former special operations personnel who had transitioned to civilian life but retained their commitment to protecting American interests from internal threats. Within hours, Steel Anchor Bar had become an unofficial command center where retired special operations personnel, active duty SEALs, and civilian medical staff coordinated a response to threats that couldn't be addressed through official channels. The bar's military memorabilia took on new meaning as planning materials for operations that would determine whether American Special Operations remained true to their foundational principles. Tommy Sullivan, the wounded veteran who had first recognized Alex's true nature, served as an elder statesman for the gathering warriors. His experience with classified operations provided context for the younger personnel who were struggling to understand how American military and intelligence assets could be turned against each other. This isn't the first time good people have been hunted by bad people wearing American uniforms, Tommy told the assembled group. The difference is that this time, we know who the hunters are, and we have the capabilities to hunt them back. Elena Rodriguez had transformed Steel Anchor's back room into a communications center, her bartending skills translating surprisingly well to coordinating logistics for multiple simultaneous operations. We've got safe houses established in 4 states, medical facilities prepared to receive casualties, and transportation assets positioned for emergency evacuation. The scope of the support network that materialized around Alex demonstrated the kind of loyalty that transcended official military structure. Veterans from multiple services and decades of operations had responded to Fletcher's calls with resources and commitment that proved military bonds extended far beyond active duty service. Admiral Peterson arrived at Steel Anchor near midnight, his civilian clothes doing nothing to diminish the command presence that had shaped his naval career. He studied the operational planning materials with the analytical precision that had made him one of the Navy's most respected strategic thinkers. "Dr. Morgan," he said formally, "I've been briefed on tonight's events, and I have questions that require honest answers." Alex met his gaze with the same calm she'd shown throughout the evening's confrontations. "Admiral, I'll answer any questions that don't compromise operational security or endanger personnel." "Fair enough. Are you, in your professional assessment, dealing with a threat that extends beyond these immediate incidents?" "Yes, sir. The people hunting me and those Marines have resources and access that suggest a systematic compromise of American Special Operations and intelligence infrastructure. This isn't random criminal activity. It's organized betrayal at the highest levels." Peterson nodded slowly, his expression grave. "That assessment is consistent with intelligence reports I've been reviewing. Doctor, I'm prepared to offer you and your team full support for whatever response you deem appropriate." The offer represented a transformation from the evening's initial confrontation to something approaching a military commission. Alex found herself in the position of leading an unofficial but highly capable force against threats that official channels couldn't address. "Admiral, I appreciate the offer, but I'm not looking to return to active operations. I'm a doctor now, and my priority is keeping those Marines alive. Doctor, sometimes keeping people alive requires eliminating the threats that would kill them. You've demonstrated tonight that you understand that principle better than most." Torres approached with a tablet displaying satellite imagery and intelligence reports that painted a comprehensive picture of the threat they were facing. "Ma'am, we've identified at least 3 more contractor teams moving toward Coronado. Whatever they're planning, tonight was just the beginning." Alex studied the intelligence with growing understanding of the scope of the operation aligned against them. The attack on Camp Pendleton, the extraction attempt at the hospital, and the incoming contractor teams were all components of a larger campaign designed to eliminate witnesses to something that threatened powerful interests. "Torres, in your assessment, are we dealing with a threat that can be resolved through defensive measures?" "No, ma'am. The resources being deployed against us require an offensive response. We need to identify and neutralize the source of the threat before they can complete their objectives." Hayes had been coordinating with intelligence sources throughout the Navy special warfare community, her officers' training providing access to classified reporting systems. "Ma'am, I've been able to confirm that similar extraction and elimination operations are being conducted against former special operations personnel across the country. This is a coordinated campaign." The revelation transformed their understanding from a personal threat against Alex to a systematic purge of personnel who might possess inconvenient knowledge about classified operations. The scope of the conspiracy suggested corruption at levels that threatened the fundamental integrity of American national security. Alex made the decision that would define the remainder of her life. "All right, people, if they want to play elimination games with American heroes, then we're going to teach them why that's a mistake. But we do this right. We gather intelligence, we identify targets, and we operate within the bounds of American law and military justice." Fletcher stepped forward with the formal bearing of someone requesting permission to serve. Ma'am, I formally request permission to activate the Pacific Coast Veterans Defense Network. We have assets throughout California, Nevada, and Arizona who are prepared to support operations against domestic threats. The network Fletcher referenced was an informal organization of retired special operations personnel who had committed to protecting their communities from threats that official channels couldn't address. It represented the kind of grassroots military capability that existed outside official structures but remained fiercely loyal to American principles. Permission granted, Master Chief. Activate whatever resources are necessary to protect American personnel from American traitors. Over the following hours, Steel Anchor Bar became the nexus of an operation that would reshape the landscape of American Special Operations security. Retired Navy SEALs, Marine Raiders, Army Rangers, and Air Force Special Operations personnel converged on Coronado with skills and resources that had been honed through decades of global operations. The transformation was remarkable. Torres and his team evolved from barroom bullies to protective assets. Fletcher's veteran network mobilized with efficiency that surpassed many official military deployments. And Alex found herself at the center of an organization that combined medical expertise with lethal capability in ways that hadn't been seen since the early days of special operations medicine. Dr. Martinez had relocated her trauma patients to a secure wing of the hospital, transforming it into a medical facility that could function as a forward operating base if necessary. Her civilian medical staff worked alongside military medics to create a treatment capability that could handle casualties from operations that would never appear in official records. Alex, Martinez said during a brief operational pause, I need to ask you something as both a colleague and a friend. Are you prepared for the possibility that this doesn't end well? That people are going to die before this is resolved? Alex looked through the hospital window at the lights of Coronado, understanding that her decision to fight back had committed not just herself, but everyone who had chosen to stand with her to a conflict with potentially devastating consequences. Rebecca, 18 months ago, I thought my war was over. I thought I could trade violence for healing, conflict for peace, death for life. But tonight has taught me that some wars never end. They just change battlefields. The question isn't whether people are going to die, but whether the right people live. The encrypted phone buzzed with another message from Blackjack, this one containing coordinates for a meet that would either provide the intelligence needed to end the threat or serve as the starting point for a much larger conflict. Ma'am, Torres said, reviewing the message over Alex's shoulder, that location is a known contractor safe house. If you go there, you're walking into either salvation or a trap. Then I guess we'd better make sure it's salvation, Alex replied. How quickly can your team be ready for a direct action mission? Give us 4 hours for reconnaissance and preparation. But ma'am, if this goes sideways, there's no official backup, no extraction support, no deniability, we'll be on our own. Alex looked around Steel Anchor Bar at the faces of people who had committed themselves to a fight that could cost them everything. Their careers, their freedom, potentially their lives. The transformation from evening confrontation to military operation had been swift and complete, but the bonds forged through shared commitment to protecting American heroes made it feel inevitable. Torres, we've been on our own since the moment our own government decided we were expendable. The difference is that now we're choosing to fight back. The operation that launched from Coronado in the pre-dawn hours represented everything that was both beautiful and terrifying about American Special Operations capability. Highly trained individuals with access to advanced equipment and unlimited commitment to mission success, operating outside official channels to protect principles that transcended politics or bureaucracy. Alex rode in the lead vehicle, her medical equipment supplemented by tactical gear that hadn't seen use since her official death 18 months earlier. The dragon tattoo beneath her body armor seemed to pulse with renewed purpose as she contemplated the battles ahead. The safe house coordinates led them to a warehouse complex in Tijuana, Mexico, where the jurisdictional complications would provide cover for activities that couldn't be conducted on American soil. The location suggested that whatever intelligence Blackjack possessed was significant enough to justify international operations. Torres and his team established overwatch positions while Alex approached the designated meeting point alone, her medical training and combat expertise prepared for whatever revelations awaited. The warehouse interior was empty except for a single figure seated at a metal table, a man she hadn't seen since the day she'd officially died in a hospital bed at Walter Reed. "Hello, Viper," Blackjack said, his voice carrying the weight of shared history and current desperation. "Thank you for coming. You said this was about protecting the Marines from Pendleton. I hope you have intelligence that justifies the risk everyone has taken to be here." Blackjack opened a secured briefcase and withdrew documents that would change everything Alex thought she knew about her service, her sacrifice, and the people she'd trusted with her life. "Viper, the organization that created you, that trained you, that gave you capabilities beyond anything in the official military structure. It was never what you thought it was. From the beginning, it was a private operation disguised as government service, designed to create deniable assets for activities that benefited corporate interests rather than national security." The revelation hit Alex like a physical blow. Everything she'd sacrificed for, everyone she'd lost, every mission she'd completed in service to what she'd believed was her country, all of it had been a lie designed to enrich people who viewed American heroes as disposable resources. "The Marines at Pendleton discovered this," Blackjack continued. "They found evidence that their training facility was being used to evaluate combat techniques for private military corporations. The attack was designed to eliminate witnesses and destroy the evidence." Alex studied the documents with growing fury and understanding. Financial records showed massive payments from defense contractors to the organization that had created her. Mission reports detailed operations that had eliminated business competitors rather than legitimate threats. Personnel files revealed that dozens of special operations veterans had been recruited for a private army disguised as government service. "Who else knows about this?" Alex asked. "You, me, and the 6 Marines fighting for their lives in your hospital. Everyone else who discovered the truth has been eliminated." The weight of responsibility settled over Alex like a familiar burden. She was not just fighting to protect the Marines. She was fighting to preserve the integrity of American special operations from people who had corrupted it for profit. "What do you need me to do?" Blackjack produced a final document, a list of targets that included current government officials, defense contractors, and military officers who had participated in the conspiracy. "These people need to be exposed and brought to justice, but the evidence against them is classified beyond official channels, and they have resources that make conventional law enforcement ineffective." Alex understood immediately what Blackjack was asking. He wanted her to use her skills and the network she'd assembled to wage an unofficial war against American citizens who had betrayed their country for profit. It was exactly the kind of operation that her training had prepared her for, but it meant abandoning any pretense of returning to civilian life. "If I do this, there's no going back. I'll never be Dr. Alexandra Morgan again. I'll be Viper 1 for the rest of my life." "Viper, you stopped being Alexandra Morgan the moment you decided to protect those Marines. The question is whether you're willing to be Viper 1 long enough to protect everyone they represent." Alex looked at the list of targets, recognizing names that she'd once trusted, faces that she'd once respected, people who had sent her and countless others into danger while profiting from their sacrifice. The dragon tattoo beneath her armor seemed to burn with purpose as she contemplated the justice that could only be delivered by someone with her unique combination of medical knowledge and lethal capability. "I'll need complete operational authority, unlimited resources, and the understanding that some of these people might not survive the experience of being brought to justice." Granted, available, and understood. Alex folded the target list and secured it in her tactical vest. When she emerged from the warehouse, Torres and his team were waiting with expressions that suggested they'd already guessed the outcome of the meeting. "Ma'am," Torres said, "we're ready for whatever comes next." "What comes next," Alex replied, "is that we're going to remind some very powerful people why betraying American heroes is the last mistake they'll ever make." The operation that followed would never appear in official records, but its effects would ripple through the defense establishment for years. The network of retired special operations personnel that had assembled around Alex proved capable of conducting activities that surpassed many official military capabilities. Within weeks, the conspiracy that had corrupted American special operations began collapsing as key figures were exposed, arrested, or simply disappeared under circumstances that discouraged others from continuing their activities. The Marines from Pendleton recovered completely and returned to duty with a new understanding of the price of integrity. Torres and his team received commendations for their role in exposing the conspiracy, though the classified nature of the operation meant their heroism would never be publicly acknowledged. They had evolved from antagonists to allies to something approaching family, for the woman they'd once mocked. Fletcher's Veteran Network became a permanent organization dedicated to protecting retired special operations personnel from threats that official channels couldn't address. Steel Anchor Bar served as its unofficial headquarters, where warriors could gather in safety to share stories and plan operations that preserved American values. Dr. Martinez continued her trauma surgery practice, but with the understanding that some of her patients required care that extended beyond medical treatment into areas that touched on national security. Her hospital became a safe haven for veterans whose service had made them targets. And Alex discovered that some transformations were irreversible. The dragon tattoo that had remained hidden beneath civilian clothes for 18 months was now displayed openly, a symbol of someone who had chosen to embrace her true nature rather than hide from it. The encrypted phone that had started the evening's revelations now buzzed regularly with requests for assistance from personnel around the world who faced threats that official channels couldn't address. Each mission offered the opportunity to use her unique combination of healing and harm in service of principles that transcended politics or profit. Some ghosts never rest, Alex said to Torres as they planned their next operation from the back room of Steel Anchor Bar. They just find new battles worth fighting. And some battles, Torres replied, are worth fighting, even when you know they'll never really end. The dragon had awakened, and it would sleep no more. But instead of breathing fire to destroy, it had learned to breathe healing to preserve, the perfect fusion of what Viper One had been and what Alexandra Morgan had become. In the end, the most dangerous person in the room wasn't the one with the biggest gun or the highest rank. It was the one who had learned that true strength came from protecting others. True courage came from facing impossible odds, and true service meant being willing to sacrifice everything for principles that made that sacrifice worthwhile. The war would continue, fought in shadows by people who didn't exist for stakes that couldn't be measured in conventional terms. But for the first time since her official death, Alex faced that war with allies who understood its true cost and remained committed to paying that price. Because some things were worth more than individual survival, some principles demanded sacrifice, and some dragons were meant to fly in defense of those who couldn't protect themselves. The phone buzzed again. Another crisis, another opportunity to serve, another chance to prove that honor was not dead in America. It was simply sleeping, waiting for the right people to wake it up. Alex answered the call. Viper One, what do you need? The voice on the other end was young, female, and carrying the kind of desperate calm that came from training under pressure. Ma'am, this is Lieutenant Sarah Chen, Marine Corps Intelligence. I'm calling from a secure location in the Philippines. We have a situation that requires your specific expertise. Alex gestured for Torres to activate the secure communication protocols they'd established at Steel Anchor. Within seconds, the call was being routed through encrypted relays that would make interception nearly impossible. Go ahead, Lieutenant. What's your situation? Ma'am, we have 12 American hostages being held by a group claiming to be Islamic terrorists, but their tactics and equipment suggest former American Special Operations training. The Philippine government has requested our assistance, but official channels are being blocked by someone with enough influence to override National Security Council directives. Alex felt the familiar weight of operational planning settling over her mind like a comfortable burden. What makes you think this requires medical expertise, Lieutenant? The hostages include a team of doctors and nurses from Doctors Without Borders. They were providing medical care in remote villages when they were taken. But here's what's strange. The kidnappers have been requesting specific medical supplies, surgical equipment, and medications that suggest they're treating serious injuries. Torres leaned closer to the phone, his tactical experience recognizing patterns that civilian observers might miss. Lieutenant, this is Senior Chief Torres. Are you suggesting the kidnappers are using medical personnel to treat their own wounded? That's exactly what I'm suggesting, Senior Chief. And the supply requests indicate trauma injuries consistent with recent combat operations. Someone hit these people hard, and they need medical expertise to keep their operators alive. Alex exchanged glances with Fletcher, both understanding the implications immediately. This wasn't a terrorist kidnapping. It was a desperate extraction of medical capabilities by people who couldn't access official medical support. Lieutenant Chen, how did you get this number? Admiral Peterson provided it through back channels. He said if anyone could help these people, it would be someone who understood both sides of the medical-military equation. The mention of Peterson's involvement confirmed that this request carried official weight, despite being routed through unofficial channels. Alex made a decision that would once again transform her carefully constructed civilian life into something approaching active military service. "Lieutenant, we can be in the Philippines within 36 hours, but I need complete operational authority, unlimited logistical support, and the understanding that this mission will be conducted according to my standards, not Washington bureaucracy." "Ma'am, Admiral Peterson anticipated that request. He's authorized me to provide whatever resources you require with complete operational independence." Alex looked around the back room of Steel Anchor Bar, noting the faces of people who had committed themselves to causes that transcended their official obligations. Torres and his team, Fletcher's veteran network, Elena's logistical support, Dr. Martinez's medical expertise, all of it had coalesced into something that resembled a military unit, but operated with the flexibility that official structures couldn't match. "Torres, how quickly can we mobilize a medical tactical team? Give me 12 hours to coordinate transportation and equipment. We'll need specialized medical gear for trauma surgery in field conditions, plus enough firepower to extract 12 hostages from a hostile environment." Hayes stepped forward with the kind of precise military bearing that had made her one of the Navy's most respected female officers. "Ma'am, I formally request permission to join this operation. The hostage rescue capabilities we demonstrated tonight prove that this team can accomplish missions that official channels can't handle." Alex studied Hayes with the analytical precision she applied to all tactical decisions. The SEAL captain had evolved from antagonist to ally to something approaching a trusted subordinate in the span of a single evening, a transformation that spoke to the kind of leadership potential that transcended rank and service affiliation. "Permission granted, Captain, but understand that this operation will be conducted under medical protocols as much as military ones. We're going to the Philippines to save lives, not take them." Martinez appeared in the doorway with a medical kit that contained equipment far beyond standard emergency room supplies. Her transformation from civilian physician to something approaching a combat medic had been as rapid and complete as everyone else's evolution throughout the evening. "Alex, I've prepared surgical equipment that can function in field conditions. If those hostages have been injured, we'll be able to provide definitive medical care regardless of the tactical situation." Brooks had been monitoring intelligence feeds from his improvised communications center, his technical expertise providing real-time updates on the situation in the Philippines. "We're receiving reports that the hostage location has been identified through signal intelligence, but the Philippine military is refusing to conduct rescue operations due to political considerations." Fletcher reviewed tactical maps on his tablet, his decades of operational experience providing context for the mission planning. "The terrain around the hostage location is mountainous jungle with limited access routes. Any rescue operation will require small unit tactics and extensive medical preparation for casualties." The magnitude of what they were proposing began to crystallize for everyone present. They were planning to conduct an international hostage rescue operation using resources and personnel that existed outside official military structure, operating in a foreign country with authorization that couldn't be officially acknowledged. Elena approached with coffee and the kind of logistical support that had made Steel Anchor Bar the unofficial headquarters for their growing organization. "I've contacted civilian transportation companies that can provide airlift capabilities without official oversight. If you need to move people and equipment internationally without bureaucratic delays, I can make that happen." Alex accepted the coffee with gratitude for the ordinary human comfort it represented amid the extraordinary circumstances they were navigating. The contrast between the simple pleasure of warm coffee and the complex life-and-death decisions ahead encapsulated everything about her transformation from hidden civilian to operational leader. "People," she said, addressing the room with the authority that had made her one of the most effective special operations leaders in American military history, "we're about to embark on a mission that will define not just our success as a team, but our commitment to the principles that make military service meaningful." Tommy Sullivan raised his whiskey glass in another of his impromptu toasts. "To the ones who answer the call when no one else can, to the ones who risk everything for people they've never met, to the ones who prove that honor isn't dead, it's just waiting for the right moment to show itself." The room responded with a collective hoorah that carried the weight of shared commitment to something larger than individual survival or success. They had evolved from a group of strangers confronting each other in a bar to a military unit bound by principles that transcended rank, service affiliation, or official authorization. Alex finished her coffee and stood, her decision made and her course clear. All right, people, we have 36 hours to plan and execute a hostage rescue operation in a foreign country against enemies who may be former American Special Operations personnel. Let's get to work. The planning session that followed demonstrated the kind of military efficiency that emerges when highly trained individuals focus their expertise on a clearly defined mission. Torres coordinated transportation and equipment, Hayes developed tactical approaches, Fletcher activated intelligence networks, Martinez prepared medical protocols, and Brooks established communication capabilities. As dawn approached over Coronado, Alex found herself standing outside Steel Anchor Bar, looking at the lights of the naval base where her official military career had supposedly ended 18 months earlier. The dragon tattoo beneath her tactical vest felt warm against her skin, as if responding to the proximity of its original home. Dr. Martinez joined her in the early morning quiet, both women understanding that they were about to cross a threshold that would make their previous lives seem like preparation for this moment. Alex, are you ready for this? For what we're about to become? Alex looked at her friend and colleague, recognizing that the question applied to everyone who had chosen to follow her into this new form of service. Rebecca, 18 months ago, I thought I was ready to be a civilian. I thought I could leave the war behind and focus on healing instead of fighting, but tonight has taught me something important. What's that? Some people are called to heal, some people are called to fight. And some people are called to do both, to be warriors who preserve life instead of taking it, to be dragons who breathe healing instead of fire. Martinez nodded with understanding that transcended medical training or military experience. And some dragons are meant to gather other dragons around them, to build something that's stronger than any individual could be alone. Alex looked back at Steel Anchor Bar, where the lights were still on and people were still working to prepare for an operation that would save 12 lives and probably change their own lives forever. The transformation from evening confrontation to international rescue mission had been swift and complete, but it felt inevitable in ways that defied logical explanation. The phone call tonight wasn't random, Alex said quietly. Admiral Peterson could have sent official military assets to handle the hostage situation, but he sent it to us because he understood something that Washington hasn't figured out yet. Which is, sometimes the most effective military operations are conducted by people who choose to serve rather than people who are ordered to serve. Sometimes the strongest units are formed by shared commitment rather than official assignment. Torres appeared in the doorway of Steel Anchor Bar, his expression carrying the satisfaction of successful mission planning. Ma'am, we're ready to deploy. Transportation is arranged, equipment is loaded, intelligence is current, and the team is prepared for immediate departure. Alex took one last look at the Coronado sunrise, understanding that this would be the last morning of her life as Dr. Alexandra Morgan. When she returned from the Philippines, she would be something new. Not quite the civilian physician she'd tried to become, not quite the special operations asset she'd once been, but something that combined both identities into a form of service that hadn't existed before. Then let's go save some lives, she said, walking back towards Steel Anchor Bar and the people who had chosen to follow her into whatever came next. The dragon was fully awake now, surrounded by other dragons who had learned that the most powerful flames were the ones that brought light instead of destruction, hope instead of despair, life instead of death. And somewhere in the Philippines, 12 hostages waited for rescue that would come not from official military channels, but from a group of warriors who had chosen to serve something larger than themselves, something that made their sacrifice worthwhile. The war continued, but now it was being fought by people who understood that victory wasn't measured in enemies eliminated, but in innocence protected, lives saved, and principles preserved. Viper 1 to all stations, Alex said into her encrypted radio as their convoy departed Coronado. Mission is a go. Objective, bring everyone home alive. Copy that, Viper 1, came the collective response from voices that carried the commitment of people who had found their true purpose. The dragon was flying again, but this time it wasn't alone.